Welcome to The Rest is Tech. So the sort of things we're going to be talking about is people just don't know what they don't know. Part of art of the possible. I do. I have it down as data knowledge leads on to we've always done it that way. What do you want to get from IT? Watermelon reports. We talked about every business has potential. So potential is every business has potential, but not all business owners know how to maximise that potential and get the most out of their business. So that's the problem.
What's the precipitous event that says we don't know what our potential is, we think technology can be doing more than it's currently doing, or doing it differently or cheaper or better, or removing what is it?
People not necessarily know. If they already know the answer, they don't need us. They just feel that they can get more out of the business. They feel that they can get more value. There is more to be had.
So this is linked to you don't know what you don't know, and what's the art of the possible.
Indeed.
There's just a feeling that something's not quite right, or we could be getting more frustration. Good word.
Frustration that they could get more, or they've reached a ceiling of where the current company is, and we all know that there's the Rockefeller habits where you have to have step changes in every company's growth. So they just don't know how to take that next step, next evolution, next growth spurt.
Competence, is it like a question mark over competence of existing, providers, people, the amount of experience in the business? I've had that before. I've been brought in because I've just got more experience, and it's like a reassurance. It ends up going off in different directions, but to begin with, it's a reassurance that we're doing the right things or we're not doing the right things. And that feeling I had about, not quite getting the value out of technology was valid, because we're not,
Yeah, so
again, back to don't know what we don't know. But
what were the outcomes of some of those where you were brought in, though?
Well, many and varied, because the precipitous event is, okay, we're not confident. And then once you get into an organisation and can see it properly, there's always things you can do better. And it becomes a dialogue then with the board or the leadership team, whoever, about what sorts of things you could be doing. So cloud, when cloud came about, for example, I was in the Middle East. All the organisations that I dealt with out there had on-premise technology. They didn't understand the cloud. They didn't want the cloud. They didn't know about the cloud. They like to touch and feel all their equipment and stuff.
Keep them warm in summer.
Especially, very warm. And it was about cost management. It was about getting rid of the upgrade path, because cloud, as you know, you don't have to worry about all those upgrades. The cloud providers do that for you. Obviously, there were worries about security in doing that have to be mitigated. A big one was CapEx, OpEx, moving away from CapEx and into...
Well, I think cost is a big one for medium-sized businesses as well, though, because the cost is not just the cost of the kit. Medium-sized businesses often don't have an IT team. If you're a big enterprise, you have an IT team, therefore on-premise, that's fine, they're used to looking after that. But medium-sized businesses don't have an IT team to look after this kit, keep it upgraded, keep it secure and all that sort of thing. So a lot of those costs aren't considered when you're just looking at them.
And training costs. So when you've got a small tech team that are responsible for keeping all this kit going, they've got to keep going on training courses to be certified to manage it. And moving to the cloud obfuscates a lot of that cost. Not all of it's slightly different, but you can choose where you put your money. Do you want to keep the expertise in-house and there's a cost associated with it? Do you want to put it in the cloud and there's that loss of control fee? It's not a loss of control, but people perceive it as a loss of control. I mean, now everyone's got everything in the cloud, haven't they? Yes. But at the time, it was, what's this dangerous thing called the cloud? How can it help us? And there's always something coming down, like AI is the latest one. How do we take advantage of that, but keep our crown jewels protected? That's what most business owners worry about.
Well, they say that data is the new oil, don't they? So with a Middle East link there, but yeah.
See what you did there, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Data is unrecognised potential in many organisations. Harness that data for insights that you don't even know about at the moment.
So have you got data on your list of things that...
I do. I have it down as data knowledge, but also that links in data and knowledge, but also I think some companies are very reliant on individuals. I've got down here knowledge in someone's head, individual's head, which is a risk to a business. You might have a very loyal workforce, but still there's the chance that they might catch something that takes them out of the business.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that in a couple of organisations where you've got 2 or 3 experts, and really if they walk, you're in a whole heap of trouble.
Yes.
You've got to kind of get that knowledge out and codify it, not necessarily in technology terms, could be process terms, but there is a big dependency on a couple of people, or systems, old systems that haven't kept up to date. They've got inbuilt knowledge.
There's some people might not actually walk, because you might have a very loyal workforce and it's a great place to work, but it doesn't stop people catching, dare I say, terminal illnesses and things that take them out of the business, unfortunately.
Let's call it unforeseen events, shall we?
Yes. Well, everyone talks about the big red bus, but in the middle of the country you don't have many big red buses, do you? But you do have terminal illnesses. And that leads on to, we've always done it that way. There are instances, we talk to companies where you ask someone why. I think that's the biggest question we can always ask people, isn't it? Why do you do that? Why? And people say, oh, we've always done it that way, or Fred brought that system in, and say, great, let's go and talk to Fred. Oh, he left 3 years ago.
I bet we've all got war stories about that, though. Classic war stories about, we've always done it that way. It sounds trite, but it's so not, because it's linked to this, people that have got the knowledge, and they'd normally defend a way of doing something, even though logically, it doesn't really stand up.
People inherently don't like change, do they? We do, because that's the business we're in. But
even when you can show them, I worked for a bank years and years and years ago. And they'd started, you used to have to phone up for a credit card, I'm showing my age now, for a credit card authorisation sometimes.
What's the phone?
Easy tiger. And there were a number, let's call it 5 pieces of information, that when you phoned up, you had to provide these pieces of information. So obviously there was who you were, as a merchant, the transaction value, these were obvious things. And the 5th piece of information that they used to ask the 4 pieces of information. And the 5th one was, what's your merchant code? And it was the one that most people didn't know. But it wasn't the first piece of information they asked. So you've already had the person on the phone for 30, 40 seconds. Then you go and ask them for their merchant ID, and they don't know it. So you either have to hang up and call back, or you have to hang on the phone waiting. Well, we just had such a battle moving that to be the first piece of information, because it just kept the phone lines clear. I don't know. Okay, can you go and find out and ring back? Yeah. Was much better than keeping you on the phone for 40 seconds, giving me the name of the person and the PAN, the 16-digit number, which invariably people, is that 4 or what did you say there? 3, 4? And then the name, then the amount, then the merchant number they don't know. And it literally took, I think, about 6 months to convince them, and it was the resistance to change, to swap that to being the first piece of information. And obviously there's a massive performance improvement.
So talking about phone lines, again at a bank, I worked for a retail bank in the UK, and this is before CLI really took off. They wanted...
What's CLI?
Call line identifier. Apologies. It's a TLA.
What's the TLA?
The 3-letter acronym.
Thank you.
But they wanted every branch, when they phoned into the support desk, to be answered with hello and the branch name. How are you today? That sort of thing. So what they did was, because they couldn't identify who was calling in, because it was all calling one number, what they did was they reversed it. So they had, I don't know, we had 3,500 branches or something. They had 3,500 different numbers. So they all thought they were calling one dedicated number for that branch, but it just meant they were all coming through on a hunt group, so they were all answered by the same people, but it meant you could answer who...
As if you were from that branch.
Yes, as if you were from that branch, it's just a different way of taking a step back and looking at what do you want to achieve, what's the business problem you want to solve, and there's often a different way of looking at it.
That's in processes. I presume processes is on that list somewhere. I mean, it's linked to the, we've always done it that way, but actually a lot of value comes out of liberating processes, not necessarily with technology, but just actually looking at why you do things,
yes,
and why you do them that way, and just changing them.
Well, I suppose it actually leads from the next point on the list, which is what do you want to get from IT? Do you know what a reasonable level of expectation is?
How do you know, if you're in a situation where you're running a business, how do you know the answer to that question?
Well, often you don't, because your business is in manufacturing, your business is in retail or something. You're not in IT, so that's not your area of specialism, is it? So it
has to come as a cold, fuzzy chill in the back of the spine that I'm not getting what I want, but I don't know what it is that I do want.
Well, people aren't thick. Business owners aren't stupid, are they? They have a sense of what's right and what's wrong, and if they feel that they're not getting the level of service that they would want, or the level of service they'd expect to deliver to their customers, then why should they put up with a sub-level of service from their suppliers, I suppose?
But they don't know what to do about it.
They don't know what to do about it. Or they don't even know whether their expectations are realistic. I mean, we'd probably all like to drive to work in a Rolls Royce or something, wouldn't we? But that level of expectation is not realistic. So what they want to get from A to B, they want to achieve some outcome. They've only got a certain amount of money to spend on that. What service can they get for that level of money? Can they get what they want for that money? Are they being unrealistic? That many people just don't know what they're being asked, what they want. Is it A, is it achievable, and B, is it a realistic expectation for the money I'm willing to spend?
I think as well, a lot of business owners, they're great at finance, they're probably quite good at marketing, they obviously know their operations and their business incredibly well. Tech is the one area that is quite often the weak spot where the business owners don't have personal experience or expertise in, and have to rely on someone else.
And they see it as a cost, though, don't they? They don't see it as a benefit to the business. They just see it as a necessary evil or a necessary cost of running a business. But it can actually generate income for the business if they use it effectively.
I remember working with a guy who wanted to go on a journey with technology from necessary evil, as you say, exactly how it was framed, to valued business partner. I'm not sure we ever entirely got there, but we certainly shifted the needle in that direction.
Yeah, it's a big ask, depending on how big the business is, but you can move. Working with some clients where they have a website, takes orders, and that emails the orders through to a sales team to then re-enter them into a system. Well, you can remove that step, place the order, automatically ship it out, or place the orders directly on the warehouse to ship it out, type thing. So there's unnecessary, we're going back to process again, aren't we? But there's unnecessary steps. Yeah,
but it's fine, because technology and process are interlocked. There's not much you can do about that. At the end of the day, what does a computer do? It does what you tell it. And what do you tell it? Well, you tell it to run a process or link a process or connect a process. That's what,
yes.
The things in the middle of a computer are called processors, probably for a reason.
Indeed, yes. Yeah, and yes, as you say, it just really automates. And they're good at doing repetitive tasks over and over again.
Getting it right every time, or hopefully
getting it doing the same result.
Consistent, sorry,
not necessarily getting it right. So another example, worked with a company where they introduced a new payroll system, and each STEM member of staff's pay was out by a couple of pence every month with the new system.
Wasn't that on Superman 2 or 3 or something?
It might have been, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a genuine. So the new system, when they looked into it, the new system was right. It was actually calculating the right.
Oh, really? So they'd been getting it wrong.
They'd been getting it wrong for so many years, but it was almost. It's a perception. Although it was wrong, that's what staff expected. That was their pay, and the fact that it was now different but correct, that was a real uphill battle because, well, no, but that's what I'm used to. That's what I'm expecting to get. I'm happy getting that amount of money.
Hard sell, isn't it? Change is a hard sell.
Yes. So that was a difficult task. But what would you do differently in the future? Well, maybe before you introduce the new system, correct the old system.
Yeah, but you probably didn't know there's anything wrong with it.
You didn't. But so we went through a period of dual running. But so you could have altered the old system to match the new and not tell people. I don't know. It's all smoke and mirrors, isn't it?
Yeah. What else is on the list then?
Watermelon reports. We talked about watermelon.
Yeah, but I didn't know what this is. So what is a watermelon report?
Yeah, it's an interesting phrase that I've only just sort of recently become aware of. A watermelon is green on the outside and red on the inside. So lots of businesses or business leaders are told what they want to hear. They're shown facts and figures that make them happy, but not necessarily the true picture. You know? Green we always associate as good, on track, within budget, whatever. And red is a warning, a flag, isn't it? So that's what the person receiving the report is seeing is green, it's all rosy, but actually inside it's red, and when you delve into it, it's actually not as good as you're being told. And
I think I asked you this before, but how would you know that you've got watermelon reports, excuse me, and not real reports? I mean, is that back to you don't know what you don't know?
Well, exactly that, and
feelings.
And that's where you need some sort of independent review of what you're getting. Or just to challenge those reports. Maybe the report information you're being given can be presented in a different way that will highlight those problems. But the quickest and easiest way is just to get someone to independently look at it and challenge, ask the why.
I think tech reports in particular suffer from this because we've always used this red, amber, green traffic light sort of system, haven't we? And I bet you if you go into most businesses, there's some sort of SLA report that's given from the technology leader, whether it's the CIO or whoever's running tech, to the CEO, and he looks at it and probably just looks at the colour and says, it's green, okay, it's okay. But if you actually asked, well, what's that telling me? Quite often, I mean, I've even produced those reports, and I know they don't say anything, but they look nice because they're green.
Well, and they're all in tech speak, aren't they? So they all talk about uptimes and transit delays or whatever.
Yeah, I've never put in business terms.
Business language. No, it's never in business language. And I think Winston Churchill, one of my favourite quotes from Winston is lies, Dan lies and statistics. I think that was a Winston Churchill quote. So you can make anything.
We might need to fact check that.
We might. Look in the gap below for a fact check, whatever. In the comments below. But yeah, so you can make them read whatever you like. Availability means nothing. I'm a big proponent of fingertip, what I call fingertip to eyeball. So you press your fingertip on a enter or some key on the keyboard, and how long it takes for that information to be available to you on the screen. That's the true business measure.
Real-time reporting.
Well, not just reporting, or if you're measuring, it's not necessarily reporting, but if you've got a system that's doing finance or manufacturing, any system that you're using in the system, in your business, you press a button, how quick before you get the answer that you need? It's not necessarily reporting, it's just giving you real-time
information. That's the whole minefield, isn't it, though, of like data, information. I mean, you must have, same as me, had all these reports when you come into an organisation and look at them and say, well, again, we've had this conversation before. You can't manage what you can't measure is a common phrase, and one I tend to agree with. But there's also lots of things that you can measure that there's no point measuring them. They don't really add any value.
No, indeed.
So measures are one thing, but actually value creating measures that you can then make decisions off the back of is something else.
Yeah, and well, no one wants to be micromanaged either, do they? So there's a level of what is a sensible level of measurement and therefore management, as opposed to over management and killing people with bureaucracy.
Well, back to your lies, damn lies and statistics. But I think top down and bottom up as well, isn't it? Bottom up tends to flow a lot of information that's unnecessary, whereas top down actually only snippets of that. Or aggregated information is what's actually valuable when you're talking about leadership teams.
Yeah, dashboards is a phrase that people use, isn't it? So layered information.
Yeah, but the danger of that though is going back to your watermelon reports and just having everything as green. But what does that actually mean?
Yeah, and I think you need someone that's comfortable enough within a business to actually surface some of those issues that, if your job's on the line, the boss doesn't want problems, he wants solutions, doesn't he? So, but yeah, the watermelon report is a thing, and getting to the bottom of that, or understanding that you might be getting a watermelon report is the first step, isn't it? So
what do we call, when we go in and fix and get rid of watermelon reports, what are non-watermelon reports called? Have we got a label we can slap on those?
No, I don't think not that I'm aware of.
We need to come up with one of those.
We do. We'll brainstorm that for a future.
Come on then, what else is on there? Must be some goodies.
Yeah. People understanding or reviewing whether their spend actually contributes to their future success. Lots of companies might get hung up on they've bought a system and they're just constantly, or they've got a new piece of manufacturing machinery or whatever, and they're just constantly improving it. But there becomes a point where you get diminishing returns. You just live with what you've got at some point. Don't try and constantly make it better, because, like I said, diminishing returns. You'll be throwing money after something where you're going to get very little business benefit. I think a lot of companies lose sight of, they get so caught up in this is what we're doing, and they keep throwing more money at it, more time, not necessarily money, but time is money as well, more effort at something, and they lose sight of what they're trying to achieve.
And you've also got the fact technology is always changing, isn't it? So what was a good decision last year or 2 or 3 years ago, there might be a better one now, and there's that balance between, but is now the right time to make that decision, or do it, what they call it, sweat the asset.
Yes.
Is there a certain time that we should live with the asset? And then back to your point, it's, well, how much damage or benefit is it causing you to live with those past decisions? It's not that they were wrong at the time, they might well have been right at the time, but there's better things or better integration or whatever it might be you can get now.
Yeah, well, sweat the asset is a good one, and going back to your cloud analogy earlier, so there are still lots of medium-sized businesses out there with on-premise servers running old versions of software, but they're sweating the asset. They're sweating the asset past the end of life. Say a lot of them might be running Microsoft Server that's gone end of life. So if it was on Microsoft Server 2019, it went end of life 9th of January last year, yet some people are still running software on that.
What is end of life? Because
end of life
I know what it stands for, I know what it means, but I'm thinking out loud, is it like a use by date, when you go to the supermarket, which I think there's a lot of talk that those use by dates are a lot earlier than they need to be. Is it the same with end of life? Just because something's gone to end of life, is it necessarily an issue?
Well, I think your use by date on supermarket items is a really good analogy, because you can still eat things, shall we say, past the use by date and still live, still, and not be ill. And I think the end of life date on many is the same. You just run a greater risk of becoming ill, because after the end of life, you don't get all the upgrades, you don't get all the feature releases, etc. So it still runs, it's still safe, it's still happy, still gathering dust in the corner, but you're just running a greater risk that if something does go wrong.
So you need to somehow evaluate and make a conscious decision about that risk.
You do, but if you can avoid it at all, just have an end of life as a try and, as many people, if someone buys, going back to your sell by date in the shop, people will still buy stuff. Well, they can't actually, but the day before the sell by date, and then they'll eat it within a day or two. They know they're going to keep it for several weeks before eating.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
So it's the same. Well, okay, we've got an end of life. Okay, we're okay, but we should actively
You need
plan.
a strategy for dealing with it.
Yeah. To remove, don't eat it a week later or something. Don't plan to have that removed.
Probably don't eat it if it's tech at all.
No, but yeah. Now that's a thing. There are lots of companies out there that are sweating the asset beyond what is safe. It's not catastrophic, but it's just not advised, is it?
So what else have we got?
Yes. Relocation expansion, ideal time to look at changing or introducing new tech.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agree with that. Especially when you go multi-site for the first time.
Yeah.
It can be a big impact.
If you're moving site, relocating, or like I say, expanding, you're going to have to be buying new stuff, whatever that stuff happens to be, new tech. Well, now's the chance to put in something. It's not while the construction work's going on, while the rest of the business is moving, thinking of moving to this new site. It's a chance to test and implement new things with very little risk to the business, because it's not an operational site yet.
There's normally a compelling reason as well. If you're expanding and increasing the number of sites, relocating is one thing, but if you're actually expanding and you've got new sites, you will have to do things differently.
Yes, you have. Yeah, I mean, a great example of that would be warehouse. If you're going from one warehouse to multiple warehouses, then you now need to think about how you manage multiple warehouses, wouldn't you? Where you're
stock management in two places rather than one.
And where are you shipping from, and what happens if you've got an order and half the stock is in one warehouse and half the stock is in another, and there are some extra logistical challenges that you need to think about.
Services as well. I mean, I work for a small architecture firm, and they opened off, it was in the Middle East again, but in different countries, which is kind of like different cities in the UK, because it's quite easy to travel around there. But if you want to collaborate between 2 or 3 different physical locations, because you've got an expert in, I don't know, designing malls, shopping malls, but he or she's in one country, and then the team that's got the opportunity is in a different one, how do you actually get that team to work together? If you've all been in one physical location previously, it's easy, or you fly them in or bus them in or whatever it might be. But when that's harder or more prolific, you need to find ways that you can collaborate.
Indeed, but I think that's where technology has really helped, isn't it? I mean, I remember going back a good few years, I was actually the collaboration manager for a petrochemical company. My job was to introduce tech for people to work across the international division, and the international division was anywhere in the world outside of America. So different time zones, different languages, different cultures. How do they all work together? And things have moved on drastically now. We've got Google Workspace, we've got Office 365, where people can work on the same document at the same time. And
everybody learned all of this obviously during COVID, because all of this stuff suddenly became incredibly valuable if you got it, and a real pain in the backside if you didn't have it.
Yes. Well, I worked for another company long before COVID, where we introduced Office 365, and they were producing industry reports, and they were being emailed from one department to another to fill in their relevant chapters. And we just implemented Office 365, so where it would take a couple of months to do a report, they were done in a week now, because they could all work on their individual chapter within the overall report at the same time. Simple, really, when you think about it, but
well, it is simple, but I mean, 20 years ago you couldn't do that, and the technology has enabled us to be able to do that.
And that I actually introduced with the art of the possible. So I didn't go to the board and say, this is what we want to do. I let the board play with the technology, say, this is what we could do. And they got so
excited about it. We'll have one of those.
Yeah,
please.
Precisely. But they could actually see and feel what they were getting, rather than me just telling them this is what it's going to be. A fantastic way of getting your point across. Anyway, what else is on the list?